Have you ever lost something? We all have. We've all lost something, and it's always at the worst time when we need it. Like, you can't find your keys when you're late for work, or you can't find your cell phone and you get so frustrated, only to find it in your back pocket. We've all been there. We've all done it. I want to talk about losing something, or maybe avoiding losing something. Stay tuned in this episode. We're going to talk about something important. All right, welcome back to the Range Minded podcast. Just like I said in the intro, we're going to talk about how frustrating it is to lose something. But we really don't want to talk about that part. We want to talk about the part of avoiding losing something. That's right. This is episode, 285 now. I'm going to call this Safe Space. And we're going to talk about gun safes. I know this sounds like a boring, maybe a ridiculous topic to talk about, but I also think it's extremely important. And I'll tell you how I got to this point, the reason why I decided to make this episode. I think it's important that we worry about securing our guns for a lot of reasons. So let's dive into it. According to the ATF, around 200,000 firearms are stolen every year. They don't know for sure. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Some guns get stolen and not reported. But what does get reported is around 200,000 firearms per year that are stolen out of cars or out of people's homes when they're not around. That's a big deal. 200,000 guns. Now, inevitably, these guns, well, probably the majority of them anyways, end up on the streets and being used in crime. It ends up being some stupid statistic that we hear about ad nauseum. We don't want to be part of that. I think as a responsible gun owner, you should want to secure that firearm to minimize the risk of losing it. Again, this isn't really the flashiest, cool, high-speed topic that you might want to hear about, but I do think this is an important thing that responsible gun owners should want to do. Now, I don't think there should be a law saying you have to lock up your gun. It's not up to the state to tell me how to secure a firearm. But as a responsible gun owner, I think you should want to secure it. And there's more reasons than just theft. And that's what I want to talk about. I also want to go through different tiers of options that might be more suitable for you. Because sometimes securing a gun can get really expensive. But there are some other affordable options. And I think there's different tiers of product that fit everybody's budget. That's what I want to talk about. And that's what we're going to dive into right now. Let's start with the burning question. In fact, first of all, do you see Toby back there? That's my boy Toby. I got the dog tonight. Sounds like I'm divorced and I have a kid. No, he's just hanging out with me while everybody else is gone, while I record this show in complete silence. All right, the burning question is, and I've met these people, I've dealt with these people over the years, working at the gun store, working the sales counter, or even teaching classes. I meet the people that say, why do I need a safe? I live by myself. I don't have any kids. I'm extremely safe already. What's the point of having a safe? It is not just about safety. Okay, there's other factors involved. Let's say you have a house guest, or maybe you have nieces or nephews if you don't have any kids around, or maybe you have grandkids that will come around once in a while. There's a risk right there of just leaving firearms unsecured. Or, obviously, burglars breaking in. That is a big deal too. Either way, out of any of those scenarios, an unsecured firearm presents a risk right away. I know I was a pretty inquisitive kid. I always was snooping around my parents' things when they weren't around, and you might have too. I knew where my dad had the firearms. I didn't really ever mess with them or get into them. I knew where they were. I just didn't really, I don't know, as a little kid, wasn't a thing for me. And maybe it was the way my dad talked about firearms around us. But I know that there is a risk with kids and their friends. According to some reports that I've seen, about 2,500 kids per year die of firearms accidents. So we talked a little bit that last time, right? That's sad and that's rough, especially if it's one of your kids that end up passing away or one of their friends. That's awful. So there's the first real reason we should be locking it up, is to keep those firearms away from kids that shouldn't be there without, unattended. Again, as a responsible firearm owner, that should be top tier for you. Again, I don't think that a state should require you to lock your guns up, but I think as a responsible gun owner, that's something that we just want to do. To me, that just makes sense. And like I mentioned earlier, the whole security part, not just the safety of keeping kids safe, but the security side of it. I mentioned that statistic, 200 firearms per year. Again, that's according to the ATF. That's not some crazy website or AI. That's not just your missing property, which absolutely would suck, but it could be a gun on the streets being used for nefarious purposes. Also, those could come back to you. Some states actually will prosecute people that lose a firearm, especially if they don't report it stolen. So let's just say somebody does take your gun out of your car and then they use that to kill another person. If that gets traced back to you, you're going to be held responsible for that in some states, not every state. That would suck too. That's not a good deal. But on the security side of that too, it's not just theft that we have to worry about. There's also fire. And I think a lot of gun owners do not think about, what if my house burns down and I have my $200,000 gun collection sitting in a closet? That is a huge deal. That's a big investment to lose, not just from theft like we talked about, but the idea of losing a firearm or many firearms in a fire has happened. I worked restoration for a few years. I went on a fire job where somebody's gun safe was completely flooded by the fire department by the time they got there. They didn't lose the firearms in the fire, but with all the water that was being used, that's where the damage happened to the guns. It happens. But to protect somebody's life, especially a child or one of their friends or house guests, or to keep guns from getting on the street, that should be just enough. But again, protecting an investment is also a big deal. I know as I was building up my firearms collection, I had a couple of guns before I had a place to really lock them up and keep them safe. And we traveled a fair bit. And it was a peace of mind. Once I got something I could actually lock these guns up and keep people from getting a hold of them, it was definitely a peace of mind for me, knowing that, well, if they break in the house, they're going to have a harder time getting these things out of these safes. Just that alone is nice to have, knowing that, hey, while I'm away, stuff's secure. Let's jump into some of the different options that are out there at every price level. The first one we're going to talk about is the simple cable lock or trigger guard lock. Normally when you buy a brand new handgun, they come with some sort of a locking mechanism. Usually, especially with handguns, it's some kind of a cable locking system. I know some of the rifles I've bought in the past, they come with a trigger guard lock that you can secure the mechanism, the trigger mechanism, from anyone using it. And it's just usually those little round keys you put in there and turn, obviously. Now, this is the cheapest option to secure your gun. Now, these aren't going to keep it from theft or fire or that kind of thing. Or a thief can simply just get some a cutting wheel or bolt cutters and cut these things off. But they're cheap. They're really inexpensive. We're talking maybe as expensive as $30 down to $0. Project Child Safe with the NSSF, they've been distributing cable locks for years and years and years. They're around. They're available. Again, this is the least secure option. If you have kids, I would still say don't do this. To me, they're just frustrating. The next option up, the next expensive option, would be some kind of a locking box, something like a clamshell type thing. So the first one that really came to mind is StopBox. And we're going to go into these a little bit more, especially, StopBox in general. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But they're a pretty good option. The nice thing about something like a StopBox is there's no batteries, there's no electronics on it whatsoever, there's no key. It uses what they're calling a hand gesture lock. So there's 5 different keys on there, and you can set it to whatever fingers you want to use to open that up. Nice option. Again, these are fairly affordable. In fact, there are some sales on them right now, and we'll go to their website later on. But we're talking anywhere from $100 to $300 or so, depending on what you're getting. It's kind of a cool option. They're made with a high density plastic, so they're not going to get damaged too easily. There are some things you need to worry about. Again, I'm going to talk about these a little bit more later on. But it is an option, and it's something easily and quickly accessible. There have been stories, because of where it's just those 5 buttons, that some intrepid kids have been able to find their way into the, they find the combination, get to the gun. But I would say that's more of an exception and not the rule. But it is something to consider. Now, can a thief just use some kind of a bar or cut into it? Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's just the next tier up from a cable lock, because it's still something that's accessible if somebody really, really wanted to get into it. Now, the next tier up from something like a StopBox, if I can say it, is a company called Vaultek. Now, they use 14 gauge steel instead of a polymer, so it's definitely more robust. And they have, at least the ones that I've seen, have multiple entry options. They use a biometric, so it reads your fingerprints, like a little button there, it reads your fingerprints. There's also a key code combination and a key to get into it. So if the battery runs out, they have a rechargeable battery. If the battery runs out, you can still get into it with some sort of a key mechanism. Kind of cool. They come in a bunch of different colors and designs. Cool little option, but they're definitely more expensive. We're talking $200 to $400 or $500, somewhere around there. But it is an option. The nice thing about both the StopBox and the Vaultek is where they're small enough, because it's just big enough to maybe put a large handgun in with an optic or a flashlight, something like that. And I'll show you a StopBox here in a minute. You can travel with them. In fact, StopBox is TSA approved, so you can fly with a StopBox or secure it in your car in some way if you travel a lot. Kind of a cool option on both of those. But neither of those are going to protect from, like, again, a bad guy could just rip that thing away from the wall or however you got it secured and take the whole thing with him. So secure, sort of, definitely better than nothing. Definitely better than a cable lock, but it's not going to keep from a determined criminal or a fire from destroying your firearm. Then the next step up from a Vaultek or a StopBox would be some kind of a locking gun cabinet. I know you've seen them. We all have seen these before. And even some of the big box stores have these. It's just like a locking wood cabinet where, yeah, that's nice. It's some sort of security from unwanted fingertips from touching them. But they're not, the wooden ones particularly aren't going to keep, obviously, from fire or water damage. But then you can also buy these locking cabinets made out of metal, and they're going to run you from $200 to maybe $600. The metal ones will. Again, better than nothing. Both of those are secure because they're attached to either a cabinet or a wall or maybe the floor, but not fire protected. And again, a determined crook can easily, cut his way into these and take your firearms. But it is definitely a next step. And again, you're paying somewhere between $200 to around $600 for a good quality locking gun cabinet, but it doesn't have any fire rating, like I mentioned earlier, which leads us to our next step. And it's probably the most prolific way of storage of life-saving tools is a gun safe. Now, there are a lot of gun safe companies out there, a lot. When it comes to considering purchasing a safe, which you need to do if you have firearms or any other valuables, really, you need to worry about several things. You need to worry about the fire rating. That is a big, big deal. A lot of safes, especially some you might see online for a really good price, they'll say they have a high fire rating of 120 minutes. But that might not be real. You need to look for something that's called a UL, Underwriting Laboratories, or whatever it is, sticker. It's every device sold like this in the United States has a UL sticker that means it's been certified to be compliant with whatever they're trying to sell you. So number one thing with safes is how long the fire rating is. Maybe you don't need something that's going to be a 200-minute fire rating safe. That's fine, but you need something, I would think. There's also different metals. Sometimes these lower quality safes are made with a lesser metal. Maybe they're not welded at the seams. Maybe they're riveted at the seams. So there's a lot of things that come into play. Even some of the internal construction of the safes themselves. Some are concrete. I have moved a safe that had concrete in it. This really sucked. Some of them are a couple layers of drywall that help the fire rating get to where it needs to be. Make sure that if you're buying a safe, if you're in the market for an actual gun safe, that you're getting good, thick metal, 10 to 12 gauge steel maybe, good quality welds all the way around, and good quality locking mechanisms. And look at the hinges on the doors, that kind of thing. It's going to give you an idea of the quality of what you're buying. Now, there are some good quality brands out there. I'm going to name drop them because that's just what I'm going to do. So, like Liberty Safe has a great reputation. I actually have a Liberty Safe here to my side. Actually, maybe you can see it. I'll show you what it looks like here. So here I have it to my side. Never mind my messy stuff up here on the wall. This is a safe I keep here in the studio, and it's nice to have. It serves its purpose. It was definitely not big enough when I bought it, which is the next key I want to really share with you about buying a safe. You always want to buy something bigger than what you think you're going to need, because it won't take long to fill it up. Now, I have several safes. This is the only Liberty safe that I own. The other safe that I really, really like is a company out of Idaho, Caldwell, Idaho. It's called Rhino Metals. I have, I think, 3 or 4 of those safes made by Rhino Metals, different sizes. They're awesome. They're fully welded. I really, really like their quality of safe. Plus, I know those guys. I trust those guys. I've had, shared meals with some of these dudes. They're totally, I respect the company and I respect who they are, and I really understand and stand behind their products. There's other safes out there if you want to spend even more money. Like, I think Fort Knox is even more expensive. And all these, they're just different tiers. You really do get what you pay for. The other thing is, on some of these bigger companies, is you actually get warranties. They will actually stand behind their product. So good quality name brand. I would avoid some of the stuff if it seems really cheap on Alibaba or one of those websites. It's probably trash. But sometimes you can get really good deals on a marketplace or some kind of online seller place, where you buy things online, garage sale type things. You might be able to find a good quality safe for a fraction of the cost. Another thing to think about when buying a gun safe itself, actually, I'm going to jump back to this one again. Oops, not that one. And I think you can see it. So you see, look, you can see my drinks. Gosh, what a messy guy. I'm thirsty, all right? I'm thirsty. I'm a thirsty guy. But you can see this one, I have a nice dial, right? This is the old school dial locking system, right? So you have to know your code, left, right, this, that. That's nice because there's no batteries required for that, obviously. But it's also slower to get into, where my other safes, they all have keypads, right? I just put in my whatever digit number code it is, and I can access that safe. They even have biometric locks too, again, that read your fingerprint, that make access even quicker. Obviously, those require batteries, and batteries don't last forever. So there's issues there too. It's kind of you gotta just decide, this way or that way. The other thing that's important to understand, once you get from the locking cabinet to a gun safe, is humidity control. Because especially when you spend a lot more money on a safe, the doors are going to seal tight in there. And if you live in a place where humidity is an issue, you're going to get rust and corrosion on some of those products inside your safe. So you have to be more mindful about that, especially if you live in a humid climate. Also, with these safes, you're going to be paying anywhere from probably $600-800 on up. And safes can get really, really expensive, especially if you get a large, good name brand quality safe. You could be spending $2, $3, $4 on a safe that well, at least it's going to be secure. But they can get expensive. But it's also really nice to have the room to put more things, because one of the reasons why you buy a bigger safe is so you can fill it up. with more cool toys. There's also other companies out there. Maybe you don't want to spend a ton of money on a Liberty or a Vault or a Fort Knox or even a Rhino Metals. Maybe you don't want to spend that kind of money. There's also companies out there that sell modular safes. They're kind of like a flat pack safe that you buy and put together and assemble yourself, which is kind of nice. If you move around a lot, it might be nice to have something that you can take down and make it a smaller, easier move and then reassemble at a different location. Those are made by a company called Snap Safe. I'm going to put these up online so you can see, or on the video so you can see what I'm talking about. So Snap Safe, they make a couple of really cool options, and so do Securits. And Securit actually makes a bunch of cool stuff. We'll talk about that even more in detail here in a minute. But they make some really cool options that might be a little bit more budget friendly. So they start, the modular starts at about $2,000 and they go up from there. So they're not free, right? They're not going to be super, super cheap necessarily, but it is an option for you to go from, again, if it's something you move around a lot, you can tear it down and then put it back together at another location. Kind of handy. Now, maybe you've got to the point where you are settled in, you know where you want to live, you're in your forever house, and you want something that's ultimately cool, man cave, awesome. And that would be having a vault. Now, I know, like you have seen, I'm sure if you're anything like me, they pop up on your feed, on your social media, and you see these rooms that are just completely decked out. Awesome heavy-duty vault door. And you walk into these immaculate, just giant gun safes. Super awesome, super cool, but definitely not cheap. There's a few companies that make vault doors. Again, Rhino Metals makes one. I think Securit makes them. There's a bunch of different. I think Liberty might even make them now too. I can't remember for sure. But again, you have to create a whole room or modify a room that is going to be secure, that the vault door is actually going to be the only point of entry into this room. So you have to have a place specifically dedicated to make your vault something secure and amazing. It's out there, but just the doors, the vault doors, you're going to be a couple $1,000 in a vault door, and then a lot of money inside that vault room once you get it to where you think it's ready to show off. It can get really expensive, and if you have the means and the place to do it, that's definitely an option, but we're talking top tier. That's going to be an expensive deal. We just went through some of these different tiers of security levels, right? And their price points. Maybe just a single cable lock is all you need because you only have one small handgun. But let's say you have maybe two handguns or more. Maybe something like those StopBox or Vault-Tec options are the right choice for you. But what happens if you have a rifle? Well, maybe you need to jump to a locking gun cabinet. I would go metal more than wood personally. But maybe you live in an area where you might be more prone to burglar activity. Or maybe you live in a structure that might catch on fire, like all of us live in something that could catch on fire, honestly. Maybe a gun safe is the way to go. It really depends on you and what you're willing to spend. It's important to understand, though, in my opinion, again, and I've said this before, as a gun owner, you should want to keep things secure from unauthorized users. I don't think it's a bad thing that kids are curious, but I think it's important that as a responsible gun owner, that we're there teaching these children about guns and about the dangers and about security and the reason why you should keep them locked up. I think as we discuss these things with our kids, they become less curious. I could be wrong. I found that was that way with my kids. I don't know what your kids or grandkids are like. But it's either way, there should be an option out there to help keep your firearms secure from thievery or just inquisitive little minds. The other thing, or the next thing you should really consider, especially if you're going from the locking gun cabinet up, is there might be a delivery fee. Like the setup and delivery can be really expensive. When I was working in Boise selling a lot of safes, I was the safe delivery guy. And I know depending on how much they spent or how generous we felt, if it was close enough to the store, we wouldn't charge them for delivery. That was just curbside, right? We would just deliver it for free because we were cool. But there were certain options where we had to move very heavy safes down to a basement or in a weird place or into an old home. That can be expensive. Finding a good guy, a good safe moving guy, I mean, it could be $200, $300, $400 just for the delivery of the safe. And then you have to secure it to the ground. That can get expensive. The other thing you really need to consider is about where, if you're getting a larger safe, is where you're going to put it. Do you live in an old home? Is that floor going to support the weight of that safe? Even if it's in a new home and you buy a huge safe, even my dogs are barking about it, is where you're going to put it going to be supported by that weight? Some of these safes, like I have a large safe, it weighs probably 700 pounds. Is the floor going to hold that weight? Or if you're going to move it in the basement, again, you're going to be paying for that. Then you got to find a way to secure it, which I think even a large safe, you should be able to secure it in somewhere to keep it from rocking around. All these things are considerations when buying something bigger because it can get expensive that way. Something else that we kind of touched on earlier was speed of access in some sort of emergency. Are you going to be able to get to that firearm in a hurry? That's the nice thing about that Vaultec, where it's just a couple of buttons, the biometric, or the StopBox, which has the buttons and no battery. But like my safe down here, where it's a dial safe, that could take me to some time, especially if I'm nervous or startled, woken up out of a dead sleep. It's going to take me some time to access it, where the safes that I have with keypads, all I have to do is punch in the numbers. There's a lot of things to consider. It is nice having a dialed safe with the dial lock. I don't have to worry about batteries, but it does take me longer sometimes to get it open. We touched on fire ratings before, and I'm going to hit on it again because I think this is really important. Cheap safes, even though they say that they might be fire rated, they may not be. You got to look for that underwriter sticker on there. But a better fire rating safe is going to be more expensive because of the materials they use. Not only are the walls usually some kind of fire resistant, they're not fireproof, but fire resistant. There's also going to be this tape that they put around the door that expands at a certain temperature to help seal that safe off. I have heard of stories of safes and fires where the firemen, put out the safe, and luckily that heat strip expanded enough to completely seal off that safe, and there was no damage to the firearms inside. That may not happen every time, but I have heard of that happening. That comes with a good quality safe. You're not going to get that with a locking cabinet just by the nature of, spending a couple $100. You're not going to get that quality. So you really need to consider that when you're looking at a safe. So I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk a little bit more about the StopBox. And the reason that I made this episode, the reason why I was really thought about maybe this was a good topic, was I kind of fell prey to an advertising campaign. In fact, I'm going to show that to you right now because it's a good deal, honestly. So I was perusing down on my socials and this came up.
Enhance.
Right? So this is StopBox's bundle and save thing. So it was told, I think it's a good deal. So you buy two for the price of one. Here it is right there. So $338 value for only $199. And I did it. So yeah, they sent me the cable and they sent me a universal mag carrier and two StopBox, the large and the small. So I thought that was a good deal. That's why I decided to jump on it, because I thought it was a good deal. So here they are. I'm actually going to do some videos on these a little bit more, dive in. But I did. I bought the two. Still in the box here. And I was really curious about them. I'll bust this one open so you can see. I think this was the one I opened earlier. And here's where you can see, it's just a series of simple buttons. And then it's got these little pads on the back to keep it from sliding around. But man, I gotta remember what button this is to open. Uh-oh. Maybe I screwed it up. Now I can't get into it because I messed with it too many times. Oh, that's why. You gotta push all the buttons that you need to push. All right. So, and there's, like I say, there's different combinations that you can use, and it comes with the instructions on how to do it. Kind of a cool idea. I recommend if you do get one of these, get the steel cable that comes, or it should come with it. It doesn't come with it. I wish they really would offer that as an option. It should just be part of the deal. But it's just nice to secure it to something more so it can't just walk away. I think they're a cool option, but where there's only the 5 buttons to be used, and you set up that specific, whatever it is, hand gesture lock, that's great. But there's only about 81 combinations to that. So as far as combinational security, an intrepid kid could probably figure out how to get into it. I told you about some of the stories online where kids were being able to figure it out within a few minutes of how to get in there. But again, not having a battery, having TSA compliant, being able to put it in your car, there's a lot of options there that I think are great. And when you saw the sale price on those was $199 or whatever it was for 2, I think that's probably a pretty good deal for what you're getting. The other next tier option from the StopBox that we mentioned earlier was the Vaultec. I'm going to switch this over so you can see what I'm talking about here. So Vaultec, they're definitely more money, but they have a lot more options than the StopBox. You can see there's like briefcase style and some of these smaller ones. You get to these, 10s and 20s. Let's just look. Oh, these are polymer. So this is their more affordable line. Let's see what we got here. Let's just look at this one. I don't even know what this one is. See if they actually give us some price points. So this is their polymer version, I think. So probably the closest comparison to the StopBox. And you can see they're going to be, these smaller ones are $170, and then they go up from there. They do have a lot of really cool stuff that I didn't know that they were making before, like these drawers and things. These are a new product. I don't know anything about them because I just saw these today. Pretty cool deal. You can peruse on their website and see what is right for you, but there are a lot of different options out there that I think it's kind of neat. The other nice thing that we mentioned earlier about the Vaultecs compared to the StopBox is the biometric lock system. So it holds several fingerprints. You can use either hand or your spouse's hand's fingerprints. They store, I don't know how many, I don't remember if it's 20 or 25 or 30 fingerprints. So there's tons of ways to get in there as far as the biometric side, or they have the push buttons. You can set a specific code or the key. So there's, like I said, it's nice because there's quicker, not quicker, but there's several options of getting inside that safe. It's not going to be the cheapest thing out there, but as far as the lockboxes stuff, there are some other options out there, and we're gonna jump into here and I'll show you. I actually think I have one of these under my bed. I think I got one of these as a promo gift or something, SHOT Show. I can't remember, but definitely cheaper. As you can see, this one, I guess it's this camera. I keep forgetting what camera we're on. So this guy has the, it looks like just a regular spin lock or key. And they're pretty affordable. The small ones start at $30, $35, and they go up to, I want to say they're under $60. I think this one here is obviously under $60. So definitely a cheaper option. I believe all these come with steel cable, so you can wrap them around a bed frame or something to keep them from walking off or disappearing. It's a cool idea, and I think it's something important that you need to consider for keeping the wrong person from getting a hold of your gun. There's options out there. That's it. That's what I wanted to talk about today in this episode. I know this is going to be a little bit shorter episode, but to be fair, the last one was probably longer than what you guys wanted. Why do I think safes or some kind of safe storage is important? First of all, having younger kids, I don't want them to get a hold of things that they shouldn't when I'm not around. But more important, I don't know how their friends are going to act or if their friends are going to snoop around. I just don't want to deal with the side effects of somebody getting hurt or worse in my home. I don't like that idea. So at the bare minimum, I just want to keep my firearms away from somebody that is not authorized to get a hold of it. Obviously, there's the theft side. Should be a big deal to you too. And then when we get to, if you have a larger collection and you're getting to something where you want to, retain your investment, a safe is the way to go. I think it's important. Again, I've said it before. I don't want to be the guy that says you have to store your guns. As a gun owner, you have to. In Australia, producer Chris, Aussie Chris, he lives in Australia, Melbourne, Australia, and they have safe storage laws for their ammunition, for anything, any kind of item related to firearms. They have safe storage laws. We see that in Chicago, in New York, in New Jersey, in California, in Washington. I think Colorado has those now too. The state is forcing you to secure an item, which I think the state has no right to tell you how to do something, especially when it comes to something that is your right. But I think as a responsible gun owner, we should be taking every step necessary to keep ourselves from being used as a statistic for the anti-gunners. Yeah, the fire thing, the theft thing, that's all part of it too, but I just don't want to be used as an argumentative point to have my rights taken away. And that's how a lot of these things are being used. The 200,000 guns per year theft, a lot of those guns make it to the streets, and then a lot of those street guns end up in the anti-guns quiver to use as an argument against us. And it's just not worth it. It's not worth the stress of dealing with it. While I'm on that subject, this just kind of came to me. I don't know, I said this was going to be a shorter episode. What if something gets stolen? What if you have a gun in your car and it gets stolen? Report it stolen right away. If you think you've lost it, if you think somebody's stolen it, report that as soon as you know, as soon as you find out. You call the sheriff's office and they're going to ask you a bunch of information. They're going to ask you serial numbers and stuff like that. If you don't keep records of your serial numbers, reach out to the gun shop where you purchased your firearm. Tell them your name, tell them what kind of gun it was and about when you purchased it. They could probably pull up that information and give you the serial number off the gun. Yeah, I know some people, they really, really, really do not like that, knowing that there is some sort of a record. But that's on the federal side. They have to keep that record. And in this case of having something stolen, it is a benefit for you. You can buy, in the industry, they're called bound books. You can buy bound books to put in your safes or put in a place where you write down the make, model, and serial number of every gun that you own. Or you can make your own version, whether it be digital or physical. I think a physical copy is a better way to go, not a digital version. I even knew a guy, a collector, he's passed away now, but not only did he keep very meticulous bound book records written down, but he had a series of photographs for each one of those guns that he put in a physical bound book. It was a thick, he had a lot of guns, a very thick 3-ring binder with several photos of the serial numbers, written down serial numbers, and descriptions of each one of his guns. That might not be a bad option for you, especially if you have a large and diverse collection. That might be a really good way to go. Let's say you find the gun. Maybe you just misplaced it. You thought you took it, but you didn't. It's still in your safe. and you've already reported it stolen, as soon as you find the gun, make sure that you contact the same agency that you reported it stolen to and say, hey, I must not have lost it. I have it here in my hands, and whatever process it is for them to take it off the stolen list. This is why I say make sure you report it found after the fact. If you find it and forget to let inform the officer or the department that you've recovered the firearm, and you get pulled over while you're carrying, and then that serial number pops and it's reported as stolen, yeah, you might get out of it in the long run if it's you that reported it stolen, but you're going to have a bit of a hassle. Or if it's your spouse that's got that gun that you reported stolen, yeah, there's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be a nightmare to clean up that mess because that's a felony. You don't want to deal with that. So just be mindful. Okay. Just be mindful there. I'm going to link Dexter Taylor's Give, Send, Go in the show notes. We're trying to work on his money for his appeal. It's not a cheap process. I did an episode about Dexter Taylor. If you're wondering who he is, he's a gentleman in New York that was simply making firearms in his home. He didn't ask permission. He had done this before some of the laws had changed in New York. He was from the Bronx, and he got hemmed up by the Fed. Not the Feds. The Feds actually did show up, but he didn't press any charges. Everything that he's facing are all state charges, but they're still felonies. So right now he's in prison. So we're working on getting him out. Nothing he did was illegal. He was exercising his Second Amendment rights. The story is way too deep for me to go into now. I'm trying to get him back on the show so he can share his story with you. Because he's in prison, we can't have video conversations, but we can have telephone conversations with him. So it'd be important for us to have that. Anyway, I'm going to link his Give, Send, Go. If you can help pitch in for his the money that he needs to work on his appeals, that would be fantastic. He's a very good man. He's a good friend of mine, and he needs to be home with his family. All right, for realsies, that's it. I'm done. That's the end of this episode. I appreciate you guys so much for hanging out and listening about storing your firearms safely. If you like this show, if you like what I have to share, please like, comment, share, maybe hit the notification bell. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, I'd be super appreciative. I have a goal of hitting 1,000 subs by the end of this year. I still got a ways to go, but I would really appreciate it if you just give me a like or follow or share any of those things. That'd be fantastic. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't. I'm too small. I don't earn any money off it, but it just helps me, helps my voice get out there more, and we can do this together. The Second Amendment is important. It is something that's granted not by the government, but by the divine providence, the maker, whatever you want to say. It's something that needs to carry on for future generations. I think it's highly important that we keep our rights intact. Remember that it's not just a slogan that I say every week, every time I make a video. You need to take somebody shooting. We need to bring more people into the family of firearms ownership. We need to be responsible, teaching them the responsible side of gun ownership, not just the garbage that they see on the news, the negative stuff. Also, it's not just a slogan that I say every time at the end of my videos. It's something that I really believe and I am passionate about. We need to take people shooting. We need to bring more people into the fold and increase the family, right? We need to make the 2A family bigger. It's important that people see the responsible and safe use of firearms to help prolong and give this gift of freedom to the next generation. And some of that freedom is definitely exercising our Second Amendment rights. Also, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. That's it. I don't know, also sounded weird, but that's it. Love you guys. Stay safe and always stay range-minded. See you guys later.
And on the third day, God created the Remington bolt-action rifle so that man could fight the dinosaurs and the homosexuals.
Amen.